Hello, I'm Barry Silverberg, Director of the Center for Nonprofit Studies at Austin Community College, and this is Civil Society, a periodic podcast to provoke more thinking about issues affecting nonprofit effectiveness and success. My guest today is Dr. Mita Kotare, Managing Director of the Sustainability and Social Innovation Initiative at the University of Texas at Austin McCombs School of Business. She teaches at both Macomb and UT's LBJ School of Public Affairs. I've known Mita for quite a while. She's an annual presenter at our Center Certificate in Nonprofit Leadership and Management and delightfully insightful conversationalist. Mita, so you spent your formative years in India. Mm-hmm. How did that lead you, or what effect did that have in terms of your current focus in terms of innovation, sustainability, and so forth?
So many things to talk about. I think just the India of my youth was so very much an underdeveloped young democracy. Scarcity was everywhere. I wouldn't say we were poor, we were lower middle class, but by today's standards, we were, or at least the standards we see in the US, certainly among the poor.
Right.
And just when you grow up that way, you have certain lived experiences that make a difference to everything you do. I mean, I see that difference between me and somebody else, even from India, who was raised in a different environment. And lived experience is so important to the work we do. Social entrepreneurship, social innovation. I keep telling my students this as well. Not all of us can have that so-called luxury. Who wants it anyway? But if you don't, you have to spend a lot of time with the people who you hope to serve. And that is something that I've really brought to my work. The other big part of it was going from I think, I went from being the majority, part of the majority in India, and I lived in Mumbai. My father's community is one of the earliest inhabitants of Mumbai. They apparently came in the 12th century.
Wow. So
really Mumbai is our land. And to go from that to be the other is a big transition. And that has taught me a number of lessons, which I at least hope I'm able to convey to my students and to my audiences. One of the things that often worries me about what we do is that we see every problem through our lens of a civilized Western society and an affluent one. And I'm always trying to think about what it is that the communities themselves need and want. And that's where, I'll give you an example. I recently saw a movie, and I'll try to say this in as general terms as possible so I don't identify the movie or my friends in it. I saw this movie about women who had been helped with some employment opportunities by a nonprofit, and they wanted to show their success, which is fair enough, and they have been very successful. But so much of that movie kept showing shots of these cramped quarters that these women lived in. And it's got me thinking, is that what we are really trying to get them away from these close-knit communities? Or is it the fact that they don't have a voice in their education, or the voice in their marriage, or the voice in who they can get married to, or the voice to be working or non-working outside the home? Mm-hmm. It's not about the dwelling. I mean, I grew up in a really small house. In the first 10 years, something between 200 and 300 square feet, 4 of us lived in it. Tiny little house carved out of barn and some farmland. Our bathroom had 2 asbestos walls. God knows what I inhaled. But I was deeply loved and secure. I happened to be best friends with one of the richest kids in the school. And she would come to my house and say, I wish I could live with you. Your mom is so sweet and you're right by her all the time. She would see me, just cuddled up against my mom and her long braids and just twirling them while I'm talking. And That's what makes a life, and we don't see it that way. We look at every problem with our affluent lens, and that's the part of living in India that has helped me a lot when I think about all the work I do.
So
Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, that was great. So that the importance of basically taking it from the point of view of the person who's going to be served to a benefit.
And we take that also to another extreme. We talk about design thinking, right? And we post it our way to problems. And we have all these so-called design thinking exercises. We don't see past that. So it comes into, the label human-centered design is a lot more of what we do. You want to embed in the communities, you want to be able to see it from their point of view, really spend time with people in communities. It isn't just about, we'll do this in 2 hours, we'll design think our way to a solution. There's a lot that comes before it, and then you start to use some of these other tools. So it's a way of reflective practice, what I tell my students who get impatient in my classes when I'm telling them to stay with the problem, learn the challenge for a while. They're used to going in and saying, oh, here's the lean canvas and let's get started. That's the piece that I at least think that it's my upbringing that makes me think that way, and then partly, of course, it's just a lot of challenges that I've seen even in the last 15 years of doing philanthropy and impact investing and teaching all of these classes.
And we certainly have a history in this country of failed social initiatives because they never took the people who were being served into consideration, such as the war on poverty.
Yes, absolutely.
So could you define for us, not academically, but operationally, what is entrepreneurship? It's not just a matter of having a little business. So for a nonprofit in particular, as they move into an area of entrepreneurship, what does that look like?
Yes, great question. I think when we're talking about entrepreneurship in the context that we do and for nonprofits, we're really thinking about changing the equilibrium. It's not about stopgap solutions and staying within the current equilibrium. So you take a small group of people and you teach them, give them some materials about health or run a few classes on eating habits and so on. It's more about systemic change. And when you think about a small nonprofit, like the kinds we have in Austin predominantly, we're not saying that each nonprofit has to stretch itself to the point where it's going to be the sole provider of this huge problem that society is facing. It's about collaborations towards creating something of a bigger impact. It's about potentially finding solutions that have been done before. Judith Rodin, the former president of Rockefeller Foundation, famously said, most of the solutions don't need to be invented. They need to be found, funded, and scaled. And that's what I find nonprofits sometimes don't do enough. We reinvent. Someone comes up with an idea and we say it's important because it's a democratic way of doing things. You have an idea, you go for it. But what about thinking about who else is doing this? What are the best practices? How can we replicate it in our community with the specific characteristics of our community? Interrise has done this great work with their Streetwise MBA curriculum. I think that's what they call it. It's training for small business owners. And what they did was, since it was working so well with them, they licensed that to other nonprofits in other places in the country. That's the kind of idea that our nonprofits don't often think about. So that's one. Trying to think about where in the, if you think about the root cause in one place, the roots. What are all the branches that go to that root cause? You're not going to take care of the entire root problem, but does your nonprofit make a systemic shift in at least some part of it? And how can you collaborate with others to do it? So that we can then create a new just equilibrium. That's what we're thinking about. And I know you didn't want me to use an academic word. I shouldn't say equilibrium, but a state of being.
I'm assuming our viewers are intelligent.
Enough. That's right.
Thank you. So the center you run, that
Yes.
you direct, let me make sure I get this right, innovation and sustainability?
Social innovation.
Social innovation. Well, I almost got it.
Yes.
Okay.
We had sustainability in our title. We're still struggling with that just because it has so many different definitions, and we're trying to find a quick way of saying our name.
I was using the old title.
Yeah, there you go. That's why I've confused you enough, Barry.
Does it get involved and work in the community?
Yes. So different programs do different things. We have multiple programs. Now, even in my classes, my students are going out into the community, talking to stakeholders. I try to get them to work on a challenge that interests them, and which they potentially have lived experience or have heard about and really feel passionately about. And then from that, I try to get them to understand from the community what the problem really is and what solutions exist in the community. We do something called an Impact Gaps Canvas, which Daniela Pappy-Thornton developed when she was at Oxford. And it really helps students to think through where their contribution can come in. So there's a lot of community interaction there. Some of my students have actually gone on to creating some products that have been interesting for the community. One of my students, who is from Chile, stayed back one semester after finishing my class because he wanted to continue to work on this web platform he developed with his team in class that helps Spanish language parents read to their children without losing that parent-child bond. How do we get that in that process? Otherwise, sometimes we send students home with materials to read, and then their parents can't speak English, so that they lose that reading time with them. So things like that are bubbling through our classes, and our students are continuing to work on them. So that's one way that our students are interacting with the community. We have a number of classes where we have a service learning component. We also have a class coming up next year, potentially, called the Philanthropy Lab, where our students will be working with the community to provide some grants and learning how to think through the causes that are important to them and to the community. We hope to continue to do this. We also have a social impact case program, which is a joint program with the RGK Center at the LBJ School, where our graduate students consult to social impact organizations. We at the back end provide them with training for consulting and so on, and provide an alumni mentor to the team. So that program we piloted last semester. It's a pretty good program, I thought, and we're planning to expand that. So new stuff like that will keep coming up. We're just a year old and running at full speed right now.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is new ways of thinking is absolutely critical to everything you're doing. Humanity, new ways of thinking.
Yes.
So let me, in terms of thinking, let me do a total shift, because
Yes.
you've got expertise in a number of matters. Let's talk for a minute about corporate social responsibility, okay? Why do corporations give money to nonprofits? And what should a nonprofit consider when it seeks or is enticed to accept a corporate donation?
That's a big question for our time.
Big question for big minds.
You're too generous. I think we've seen a shift. It started with corporations doing volunteer days for their staff, providing some donations to a nonprofit, and so on. Part of it was, enough people thought that that was not sufficient and that it didn't really make sense. More and more companies have realized that in today's world, the solutions to, or rather the problems, are so pressing and so huge that businesses have the capacity to scale the solutions in ways that we've never had just with nonprofits working alone. I think they see it as a risk issue as well. With climate change, their supply chains are being disrupted. With The change in generations as well. The millennials really want corporations to make these changes. They don't want to work in or invest in companies that don't pay attention to their social and environmental impact. So companies are starting to pay attention for a variety of reasons. Investors are pushing them, customers are pushing them, employees are pushing them, and the companies themselves see their profitability threatened. So what does that mean in terms of making this change? The change can't happen with the companies working alone. The companies have to use all the resources of the other sectors. They have to partner with nonprofits to provide these programs to communities. They have to partner with government. So we're seeing that partnership among sectors. A lot of social innovation is happening at the intersection of these sectors. So that's causing corporations to pay more attention to nonprofits in so many ways that are much more of a partnership than simply a donation or a volunteer day.
That's an important opportunity.
That's an important opportunity, and to take advantage of that, nonprofits need to know what they need to do to get there, right? I always tell nonprofits, think about which companies have either customers or employees who are well suited to what you're doing. So if you're a company, or if you're an agency, a nonprofit agency that is worrying about college education, think about all the tech employers in town who are also worrying about the fact that their potential labor force is just not there. So think about, partner with companies like that where their core mission and your core mission has something in common. Otherwise, it just becomes one of those marketing things. Nonprofits need to be thinking about how to do that. There are many companies today that have corporate responsibility, corporate sustainability officers and departments. They typically tend to have a decent budget if they exist. But then there is the marketing department. It's not just about public relations. It's about really providing something to the company in return. Which company doesn't want to be seen as a responsible business? And to really, when I speak to CEOs, they really do care about these. There isn't a CEO who just wants to destroy society. I think most people are in the business for good. We do believe that the market mechanism does work for a lot of people and has brought many out of poverty. But the question today is, how do we sort of make sure that we don't destroy society and our environment in the process? I think, yes, and I think there are many other things we can talk about in terms of nonprofit corporate partnerships, but some of the first thing for nonprofits to think about is that, what's the mission overlap?
So my last question, flip you back to the beginning. Is social entrepreneurship, as you've defined it, something that every nonprofit ought to be trying to do? Or is it for select nonprofits or particular stages of their life or whatever?
Oh gosh. I'm one of those who's completely, I'm not at all an advocate of one or the other for everything. It just depends on what the problem is. There are times when a nonprofit needs to exist for a safety net or for a population that really, really struggles. It may be a small population. It can be expanded. It can be scaled. You still need to exist. I think it's important for every nonprofit to be thinking about some of the things that we think about in social entrepreneurship, if done well. The question of, can we maximize our impact? Can we measure it in a way that makes sense? Can we really be paying attention to these outcomes? Are we being careful with our financial situation? Are we trying to be sustainable? Are we good stewards of our money? These are the questions that every nonprofit should be thinking about. And if you think about those as entrepreneurial questions, then yes, they should be thinking about it. They should also be thinking about ways in which you can create some revenue streams. A lot of times, nonprofits produce a considerable amount of material, curriculums, programs, and so on. And how can you think about how you might be able to monetize that so you can serve more people?
Right.
So those are some of the entrepreneurial issues that I would say are common to both fields, but I don't think it's all one or the other, certainly not.
Super. Meeta, thank you very, very much.
Thank you,
It's
Barry.
been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
Please visit our website, nonprofitaustin.org/civil society, to read more about social entrepreneurship and the issues we've discussed today. Also, please share your comments on today's podcast on the website. This is Barry Silverberg with Civil Society, a Center for Nonprofit Studies podcast, in collaboration with the fantastic folks at ACCTV. Thank you for joining us today.